Stories, some trade unions and political parties have welcomed Eskom CEO André de Ruyter's resignation. They say he was the worst leader that the utility has had and that his departure, in fact, was long overdue. He quits as the country battles the worst bout of load shedding on record. Eskom is facing numerous challenges, including having no money for diesel, breakdowns and a lack of skilled personnel. Let's make sense of the latest developments and perhaps what ought to be done to save the utility. Bring in our guests, businessmen Andile, Nomlala and COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator Matthew Parks, both of them joining us via our video link this morning. Gentlemen, great to have you on the program. Thanks so much indeed for making time to speak to us. Matthew, perhaps let me begin with you. Your first take on what's taken place so far. Long overdue, or André de Ruyter's got the worst timing insofar as his resignation is concerned?
Well, look, I think our concern as COSATU is about the stability of Eskom. Only Eskom can really speak to the issues of, employee assessments and so forth. But I think all South Africans are deeply worried about the state of Eskom. Load shedding is continuing to cripple the economy. It's affecting every single household, every single worker, every single business. We have to get a grip on issues. So I think our focus right now is about the way forward. So we hope that government will quickly put in place a transition plan because we need to now go and advertise, interview new recruits, find a suitable candidate, appoint them. There needs to be a quick handover as well, and that person needs to be able to get on the feet, get moving quickly. We don't have the luxury of time to delay matters because this isn't a normal job. This is one of the most critical, one of the most difficult jobs in the country. And we need to get moving quite quickly. We don't have the luxury of time to play. So I think for us, that's number one. The second issue is that we don't want to go back to the decade of instability that we had previously, where we had Eskom, at Eskom over the past decade, 10 CEOs. Basically, most CEOs didn't even last 12 months.
Right.
We need to have stability. We need to have somebody who's given space to do the work, to do the painful cleaning up. But also, if we want that person to succeed, we need to give them the support. Because often it is nice and easy to point fingers at the director or whomever. If you don't give that person the support, the material, the resources, the law enforcement assistance, etc., then we're setting up whoever we appoint to fail, if we're to be honest.
Yeah. As I mentioned, Andile, the Ruyter has been at the helm at a time when the country is really facing a crisis around our energy supply. In fact, the worst bout of load shedding on record. There are people who are pinning that on André de Ruyter, the man. There are other people who are saying it should be pinned on Eskom as an entity. Where do you stand on that?
Good morning, Ayanda, and good morning to your viewers. I think this time is not the time for us to gloat over his departure and his misdemeanors. I think we were very clear from the beginning that he was an incapable guy. Unfortunately, those that backed him, they had other nefarious means to put him there, and he dismally and disappointedly exposed them as well. But what is important now with his failures, what is important now, Ayanda, is that the country is in a crisis situation abated by de Ruyter's incapability. Now what we need to do is to move forward and find plausible solutions that could save the day. And this is what I want to agitate today, that let's forget that de Ruyter ever existed. Our misbelieving in him, disbelieving in him was never about him personally. It was about the fact that he was incapable. Now, what we put forward, Ayanda, which is important, is that Eskom must swiftly move to appoint a capable and fit-for-purpose professional. I can think on top of my head of Jacob Moroka, Dan Morakane, and many other professionals who understand the environment, because what is critical, firstly at Eskom now, is to stop the bleeding before we can even talk about rebuilding. And the stopping of the bleeding would only take somebody that is familiar with the environment, who understands the coal power stations that are at Eskom, that can quickly be stopped from bleeding from the energy availability factor. They need to be brought into life quickly, and those that need to be decommissioned must be decommissioned. And in the short and medium term, Ayanda, we called that there must be 3 new power stations, coal power stations that are 2,000 megawatts that would help to supplement our base load. And those 2,000 megawatts per plant would bring in total, if there are 6,000 megawatts that would supplement the base load. And we urge government and Eskom to urgently issue a tender that would be applied for by at least 70% black-owned businesses. And in that 70% black ownership, they must have 51% African ownership. We don't want B scores. We don't want any of those things. We want black people that can go and raise money outside of the Eskom balance sheet and get power purchase agreements with Eskom and Treasurer to provide and build these power stations within the next 24 months. And then, parallel to that, we accept and applaud that there must be an agency to move with supplementing with renewable energy. But we know that renewable energy would not serve the base load because there's not always sun and wind every day.
Yeah.
We need base load and we need that urgently, and that must be provided for by industrialists that are black, that are capable of raising money in the capital markets to build them immediately.
Sure. All right, so you've touched on a few things. You know, Matthew Parks, typically South Africans have faced the criticism that whenever we're facing a really big crisis, there's always this hope of a messiah, some savior who's going to come and pull us out of the mess. And at the risk of contradicting myself, I'm going to ask you who you reckon, or rather the kind of characteristics you reckon a person needs in order to pull us out of what Eskom has become essentially.
Yeah. So look, I mean, I wouldn't be able to give you any candidates. Government must advertise, people must apply. Perhaps they might want a headhunt to get a deeper pool of candidates. And I'm sure one does need a person who's got experience in energy and electricity, knowledge of Eskom. But equally, you also need somebody who is a leader. Because at times you don't always have to be an engineer to run Eskom, but you need a strong leadership person. But look, the interview process will sift through that and hopefully they'll come with the right candidate. We also need a person who is not tainted by criminal past, by tendencies of corruption. Because we saw with many of the previous CEOs that they were responsible for the situation Eskom is in today. We had many CEOs who hollowed out Eskom, who enabled their friends, their families to loot it to the point of collapse, with no consequences to them. As a consequence, we have an Eskom where corruption is deeply embedded. So I think, yes, we need a competent person with the skills, the capacity, the experience, the knowledge, sure, but we need to give them the support. So the support has to include relieving Eskom of at least 2/3 of its debt burden, as the Minister of Finance promised in the medium-term budget speech at Parliament. We need also to assist Eskom to ramp up the investment in maintenance, bringing on board whatever skills are needed. We need to assist Eskom to address the regulatory blockages to getting new generation capacity on board. But also we need to assist Eskom around the issue of corruption, because Eskom has been making some efforts to tackle the legacies of corruption which are quite endemic in Eskom. They've gone after Bain, McKinsey and other companies which really looted in Eskom, recovered some billions of rands. And that's good through civil claims processes, but you also need to have the National Prosecuting Authority, the State Security Agency, if it can be woken up from its slumber, the police, the judiciary, also from a law enforcement perspective tackling corruption, because otherwise, no matter how much money we put into Eskom, if you don't plug the holes, we're going to continue down this frenzy where people have looted. And we must also be honest, the looting in Eskom isn't just from within Eskom, it's also from the private sector as well, because you have many coal suppliers to Eskom. There's about 2,000 trucks a day, where people, businessmen, have enjoyed feasting off Eskom at the expense of the public. So we really have to give all the support we have to the new CEO in order to make sure they are a success. Otherwise, we're going to continue down this trajectory at great cost to the economy.
It's so interesting.
And this really shouldn't be about profiteering. It must be about building the economy for the sake of all, not be looking at tenders to satisfy our own personal needs.
Got you. It's so interesting you speak about support. You know, it's been, I guess, quite telling listening to some of the reaction to André de Ruyter's resignation. Many people pointing to the statement by Gwede Mantashe that was released about a week ago, where he seemingly attacks André de Ruyter, or comments he might have made when we were launching part of our renewable energy projects. And what is being read into that is that seemingly the president, the Eskom board, and the public enterprises minister didn't come to de Ruyter's support at that time, or to his defense. Andile, is that how you're also making sense of this moment? That what actually ultimately pushed de Ruyter over the edge was the lack of support here?
Look, let me tell you, Ayanda, we went to Lutuli House at some point way earlier when we were disagreeing with de Ruyter's appointment. And certainly at the time, we met with Mamuchesi, may his soul rest in peace. She told us in full clear view that they didn't appoint de Ruyter. De Ruyter was appointed somewhere else. He didn't go through the cadre deployment process. Now, we must commend, and obviously the president even himself convened us very early on as black business to plead with us that we must support him. But we knew at the time that he doesn't know what he was doing, because we researched and understood his experience. But fast forward to now, we must commend the ruling party, especially Minister Mantashe, for taking a stand, even though it was little too late, because de Ruyter has completely wiped out our economy in the last 3 years. He should have never been there. But the action, and as we understand, ANC sometimes takes forever, because it's a big elephant. It takes forever to move. But when it moves, it eventually makes a difference. So we're very pleased with the fact that there was that pressure. We cried alone as a lone voice, and obviously we are not government, so we will only cry on the sidelines, and we go back, the people at Lutuli House, to take the right decisions. But we are very pleased that there was that pressure, and I'm certain and quite convinced that even the president was more pleased to see the back of de Ruyter this time around. But that's not the main issue. The main issue is us saving South Africa's economy. The main issue is the capable people, black and white and every other color of professionals that have the necessary skills. All we are crying for is that the people that are fit for purpose must be found, and they must be immediately deployed at Eskom. But other measures that are of strategic nature and decision-making processes that needs to unfold. We know that the ruling party is meeting this weekend, and we knew that the pressure for de Ruyter to leave was going to come, and it was a good idea that he jumped the ship beforehand. We hope that at a policy and a political astuteness level, the ANC would be very firm, as they were this Monday, in making sure that the transformation agenda in our country, at any level, at whatever crisis, we can never compromise or even think to let transformation be by the way thing, because we have emergency things. So what we are saying is that Gwede Mantashe, the President of the Republic and Minister of Public Enterprise, did the right thing to let go of André de Ruyter, even though he voluntarily resigned. But we know that he was pressured to resign.
Sure.
But we can't dwell over André de Ruyter. He's a spent force that we should not use any energy for him. Our energies now must be to rebuild Eskom, and we must volunteer ourselves. We must not be armchair critics that sit on the sidelines. NSPCA, the engineering formation of black business, has already engaged Eskom, has put forward the names, is ready to assist with the rebuilding of Eskom, and that's what we should be focusing on.
All right. No matter what you make of André de Ruyter's legacy, many will agree across the spectrum that we desperately need to get Eskom right. For both your insights, thanks very much indeed. Andile Nomlala reacting for us on behalf of business. We also spoke there to Matthew Parks, who's COSATU's Parliamentary Coordinator. Once again, to both of you, thanks very much for your views.